So hearing none, we'll go ahead and continue to move on into the heart of our meeting in the presentation and action items. So the first one that we have up is a presentation on the racial equity update and discussion.
All right, great, thank you. And just to check in, Julie, are you going to share your screen with this item? We have a slide deck that we'll be going through tonight.
Yes, I was planning on sharing, but I just clicked share and it doesn't look the way it normally looks. I'm on a different computer.
Okay.
So it might be better if you shared it.
All right. So
if you have it pulled up.
Yep, I can do that. All right. So what you're viewing then, everybody, is the PowerPoint PDF version, which is the attachment on the board agenda. But I think everybody, you can see the item.
Marcy, do you want me to? I can drop off and log on to a different computer if you want.
That's okay. I was able to make it a little larger. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you do view full screen, Marcy, it might come up full screen.
How do I do that?
Right next to edit where it says view, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, you should be able to get to full screen.
Nope, down lower.
There beautiful.
Yay. Hey, yay.
All right, we did it. Thanks for your help, everybody. Okay, all righty. So just really happy to be here tonight to provide our racial equity update to you all and to many members of our public who are viewing from home. And tonight in our presentation, we have Judith Berry-Goujon, principal of Brookside School, Matt Catanzari, principal of Whitehill, Julia Wolcott, director of curriculum and instruction, and myself. And just as you all know, as a district, we are focused on racial equity. Research and data show that when schools focus on racial equity, improvements are seen for all groups of children. We've developed and continue to refine a framework, which is we call our Racial Equity Action Plan. And we have identified tools, actions, and resources that reflect and highlight our values and reinforce systems so that all of our students are able to reach their full potential. And we have 3 district priorities this school year. Our first one is continue our racial equity work with a focus on what gets us closer to the classroom. That's kind of our mantra this year, is what gets us closer to the classroom. Focusing on our classrooms, our students, is critical so that our students and families are able to feel the impact of our efforts and so that we can identify what shifts continue to be needed. Our other 2 priorities this year are MTSS, or multi-tiered system of support, and health and safety. All 3 priorities are interconnected through an equity lens, and all of us from our district office to the school sites are focusing on these same priorities. So all of our arrows are aligned. We're moving all in the same direction with a goal of focusing on every single one of our Ross Valley students and doing so through an equity lens. And everything that we're doing is focusing on the classroom because we know that's where our students are and what will make the most difference to them in their education in Ross Valley. And we're very happy that this year we are working with our new equity consultant, Deborah McKnight. And with Deborah's background as an educator, first and foremost, special educator. She worked for 8 years as the director of special ed in the San Francisco Unified School District. And also with her expertise in working with small and large organizations across private and public sectors, we're able to make the connections between our previous 4 years of equity work rather than forging a whole new path, and to get our work, as we've talked about, more focused on action and again, closer to the classroom. We've already benefited from Deborah's facilitation and coaching that she's provided to the Ross Valley School District in the 2 months since she started with us. And we look forward to the board having the opportunity to meet Deborah in the future. So once we return to our in-person board meetings, we'll be looking forward to having Deborah with us. And there's a picture of her because we weren't able to have her with us tonight. So we wanted everybody to be able to have kind of a face with the name and be able to have some recognition when we do meet her. Of course, those of us who've been working in the school district have met Deborah and worked with her a couple of times already. This slide shows our equity work launch for the school year. And what we've listed here are district-wide examples of what we've accomplished so far and or what we're planning to do in the first 3 months of the school year. In August, we kicked off our work with Deborah at our administrator back to school meetings and also at our certificated and classified professional development days in the middle of August. And racial equity has been a topic at every single site staff meeting. Our parent guardian team has had the opportunity to meet and work with Deborah, and we look forward to our first equity task force meeting on October 20th. And that'll be with members of our staff who are on the equity task force, our parents, as well as Shelley, who is our trustee representative in the district equity work. And then of course, any members of the public would be able to attend that meeting if they wish, but our focus is going to be on our work with our parent equity task force to get and review what you're going to see tonight. So this is kind of a preview of the work that's coming. All of our actions so far are part of our racial equity action plan, which we've broken down into trimesters. And we'll be discussing those later tonight in the presentation. All right, I'll turn it over to Julia.
All right, thank you, Marcy. So for the next portion of this slideshow, we're going to be talking about basically the results of last spring's listening sessions. And so first, I want to acknowledge the parents and guardians from our Parent Guardian Equity Task Force who really put these listening sessions together, along with help from Dr. Erica Brown, the EPIC education trainer with whom we were working, and Marcy and myself. And as you can see, we had several sessions at the middle school, and big thanks as well to Maria Lubomirsky, who helped with running those. And then we had a session in April for our parents, and that was for any parents who'd like to join. And when they joined, there was some work that we did together as a whole group, and then they went into affinity groups, and those affinity groups were facilitated by parent members of the task force. And then we did a Spanish language one with our DLAC as well. And we're still looking forward to I'm actually working with Deborah now to get a date for a listening session for our BIPOC staff. But through this, and then we also had a portal with a Google form that parents could complete and a few other mechanisms for getting feedback from parents. And so we spent a lot of time just gathering qualitative feedback and then sifting through that feedback and bringing some themes forward. So what we're going to do this evening is I'm going to show you some of the data, and the data is in the form of the the stories that came from parents and that came from kids. And again, I want to make sure I'm taking the time to really thank all of the parents and all of the kids who were willing to share their stories. It's a very vulnerable thing to do. It takes a lot of bravery. I think that when parents are talking about any harm or hurt that their children are experiencing, that's a difficult thing to do, particularly in a public arena. So huge, huge thank you to all those who were a part of this work. So you're going to see some feedback, the words and voices of our parents, and in a couple of cases, our kids, and then we'll talk about the themes that we were able to develop from that feedback. So Marcy, you can move to the next slide. And I'm not going to read these. I'm just going to pause here and let everyone read them for themselves, sort of with those parent and student voices in your head. Marcy, I think you can go to the next slide. So those were some of the comments that were made. There were others as well, but one of the things that we found collectively was that children in the Ross Valley School District do experience racism, bias, and othering within our schools. And so this is a part of their lived experience and something that we absolutely need to be paying attention to. And so again, in the parent voices here. And so our next theme is that there is a need for the Ross Valley School District to do more, that Ross Valley School District families shared challenges they experienced with the school curriculum, with staff proficiency, with regards to race and racism, and the school environment when it comes to race and equity. And we know that we need to do more. And you know, as Marcy said, that is our focus this year, and it's all throughout our action plan that you'll be seeing in a few moments. So the third theme, we need to do more as parents and community members. Ross Valley School District families have experienced racism, bias, and othering from students, parents, and other community members. And so recognizing that this is an issue within our schools and within our school community, and that we really need to join together in partnership when we are trying to address these issues. And finally, advancing equity in this community also helps white kids to be successful. Schools need to make it a priority to hire a more diverse teaching and leadership force that accurately represents broader society. And I think this is something that we all know we absolutely want to create more diversity within our staff. And we know that's good for every kid. And there are abundant studies that back that up. That talk about the power of white students learning from people of color, teachers of color. And then I wanted to just take a moment to bring us back to our Ross Valley School District Racial Equity Mission Statement. This was the statement that was written in partnership with our Parent Guardian Task Force. And I'm going to just take a moment to read it. The Ross Valley School District is committed to creating a safe, equitable, and inclusive learning environment in which all students feel a sense of belonging, are respected and celebrated for their individual differences, and are empowered to thrive socially, emotionally, and academically. We are equally committed to building the leaders of tomorrow who will combat racism and promote equity throughout their lives. Ross Valley School District parents, guardians, staff, students, and board trustees in partnership will create policies to disrupt systemic racism and prioritize equity in our organizational structures, curriculum, and instructional practices. We will do this by actively engaging, listening, and responding to the voices and needs of our marginalized students, families, and staff, and working to engage in anti-racist actions that build a vibrant, inclusive learning community. And I think it's really important to kind of sit with this statement after reading and listening in our heads to the voices of parents and in some cases of students who are describing the experiences that they're having in Ross Valley. And I'll pause here for a moment before we move forward and start kind of unveiling our action plan to see if there's any comments or thoughts from the board.
It's Rachel. I just really wanted to say thank you to the people who were willing to share these things. I know you already said this, Julia, but like reading some of these statements, it was really striking to me what these people were saying and the students. And so I think a thanks is definitely in order. And I just wanted to bring that up now. That's all.
Thank you. All right. And so, you know, we have our vision, our mission statement, and we absolutely know that we need to move forward and we need action. And so our racial equity action plan is kind of a framework for that action. We recognize that this is very much like a working and ongoing document. Thus far, the action plan was created by our administrative staff. We got feedback from our Delight teacher leadership group. We've sent the plan to our parent group. We've gotten some feedback, but we haven't yet been able to really have time to talk about the plan with them. So we imagine more adjustments will be forthcoming once that takes place. But it's a really good starting place. As Marcy said, for each action, we're identifying the timeline for it, either as T1 of this year, meaning the first trimester of the year, T2, the middle of the year, or T3. Some actions are ongoing actions, and then there's a couple of actions that we think we likely won't get there during this year, but we wanted to leave them in the plan. And so Judith and Matt, our fabulous principals, are going to be presenting the action plan to you, starting with Judith.
Thank you, Julia. So I'm sure you will all agree that the themes from our listening sessions truly speak to the urgency of our equity work. And our leadership team is committed to our personal journeys about race, as we realize that this is a necessary step in developing our own ability as leaders of this work. Deborah is facilitating opportunities for us to engage and grow into instructional leaders who can support all members of our school communities in this necessary process. And we are all in agreement that the time for action is now. So we are going to be showing 6 slides that illustrate our plan. And for this first slide, I will explain a format of the plan to help you better understand how it's organized. Each slide has an identified anti-racist outcome up at the top with the overarching goals and the area of focus for the district. As an example, this one is professional development. And on the left in the blue box is where we captured the history of actions taken to date related to the goals at the top. Action items are listed and coded with the area of focus. For example, you can see on this slide, it says PD1, so Professional Development Action 1. Action items are described and resources and the people are identified, and the timing of when we plan to take these actions is marked with for the trimester of when those actions will occur, such as T1, T2, T3. For each slide, Matt and I will choose an item from T1 to highlight this evening. So for this slide, I'm going to focus on action item PD3, providing training and support to the site and district admin on facilitating equity conversations and work. Principals have been facilitating conversations and working with staff for several years now. The difference with how we are doing this work now begins with having the focused time that we had last year to hold the listening sessions and have that opportunity to gather the tremendously important input of our BIPOC students and families. We used a lot of that input to work collaboratively together to develop this plan. These brave voices help to illustrate what needs to change in our schools and, of course, the urgency of these changes happening. With Deborah McKnight's assistance this year, we are going deeper with our own personal journeys and our understanding about racial equity. We're using Deborah's activities with us as a guide to the work we are doing with staff. We're working collaboratively as an administrative team to plan PD with staff. Our district and site PD time includes a focus on structured activities aligned with our goals, along with having the ongoing time to follow up to provide support to staff and ensure that the action items are happening in our classrooms. The activities we're engaging in ourselves and then leading as principals include a new component of introspective journal writing and talking about race with each other. It's really taking the work to a deeper level, personally and professionally. And the personal part is such a necessary step in this journey to be able to truly make a difference with students. We all see that this introspective process and ability to have conversations is needed for us to do this work. Do we want to hold questions to the end and I'll just talk about the next slide? Okay, let's move to the next one. For this slide, I will focus on C1, which is our equity book bundles. And last Wednesday during our district grade level team meeting, we had teacher leaders for each grade level introduce the equity book bundles. Teachers shared social justice standards from Learning for Justice, which is an organization founded by the Southern Poverty Law Center in 1991 with a focus to prevent the growth of hate by reducing prejudice. In the past 30 years, their work has grown to center on action and the action students and educators can take to realize change. They are a fantastic resource for teachers, and the social justice standards developed by this group are really easy to understand with clear grade level outcomes aligned with anchor standards, which include standards of identity, diversity, justice, and action. Teachers last Wednesday were introduced these standards for their respective grade levels and provided books with accompanying lesson plans that focus on grade level standards. The organized format for the lesson plan included conversation prompts and extensions. It's a format that may be useful for teachers beyond application for the lesson that goes with a particular book, because the format for the lessons were so well put together with lots of resources. On Wednesday, teachers led their peers through reading one of the books, actively participating in racial conversations about the book, and asking any questions they have about leading these lessons and discussions with their students. The conversations were rich and meaningful to support teachers at a range of levels for leading equity work. And they were also ensured by the administrators in the room that administrators are there to support them in this work in whatever way that they need. I also, I happened to be in the fourth, fifth grade meeting, and I saw a lot of collaborative conversation and sharing of ideas and willingness for those that maybe have gone further along with this work already, maybe last year or even the year before, we're doing lessons in their classrooms, offering that assistance to their peers, to their grade level peers. So there was also some time for sharing activities that teachers have done since the beginning of the school year. These grade level meetings are really invaluable that we're able to have because the specific collaboration with peers that are working at the same grade level is really invaluable. So teachers now have the action step to read one of the 4 books, lead their class in a conversation, and report back the experience by our next meeting in October. And then, of course, there will be the action step to continue to read the other books and do the lessons that go along with those books. For this side, I'm going to focus on SC3, implementing community circles and restorative practices. Many teachers have been using community circles and restorative practices prior to this school year, but some of the new steps we are taking include gathering important information about racial, cultural, and gender identification at parent intake conferences at the beginning of the school year. This information is really important to help raise awareness for how teachers are seeing and understanding each unique student. Teachers are finding that the community circles are a safe space for students to share and engage in conversations about their racial experiences. Community circles create opportunities for the ongoing social emotional instruction related to real experience students are having. They're often used as a format for students to discuss real experiences that they have during the course of a school day. Restorative practices, which include helping students grow in their understanding and acceptance of individual difference and needs as they resolve their conflicts. Though a lot of that happens through the community circles. And there are other ways that teachers facilitate dialogue between students. And I should say administrators as well, because the administrators in our district have been working for a long time on developing and refining our restorative practices.
Thank you, Judith. Any questions for Judith so far before we move on to Matt? Okay, all right. Matt, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, Judith.
Thanks, Marcy, and thank you, Judith, for that awesome introduction to our action plan. So I'm going to be talking about academic achievement, and I'm going to be looking at AA2, which is align EL support across sites and develop program based on best practices in English language development, increase home language translation. An example of that are report cards and communications. One of the things that we are doing in the EL world that has been a change is all of our EL students have a caseworker now, and we believe that will best serve each student. Each teacher is creating goals similarly to what happens in a special ed program for those students, and the EL teachers will work towards those goals. Another thing that has shifted is that our students are not being pulled out of one of their elective classes. We think it's really important that they're able to experience their elective classes. Usually those are classes where they can learn some academic language that's important, but also have some fun. So our teachers push in to help those students with their goals. And they also see those students during their advisory classes at Whitehill to help with their goals. One new thing that we've started, and we actually had our first one today, and we're really excited about it. We started a new tradition where we are acknowledging our EL students that have been reclassified. And that's a huge equity piece. It's huge for us. And those students should be celebrated because they have done a lot of work to get where they are. And it opens up opportunities educationally for them beyond high school. So that's really exciting. So yeah, that's the academic achievement in T1. The next outcome is community stakeholder engagement. And we have a couple in trimester 1 there. And I'm going to focus on the CSE2, which is to diversify and expand on parent leadership groups to ensure representation of all families. A couple things noted there: embed equity work in all parent groups, provide multiple meeting options, and incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion work into our site councils. And we've had a lot of conversations as an admin team about making sure that when we have things in the evenings, and we recognize not all people can make those make sure there's multiple opportunities for people to participate, but also make it a priority that all voices are represented in our site councils. They help advise us, they help do things at our sites, and we want as many voices to be heard and have a seat at the table. So that's an important piece, and our principals are working on making sure, and our parents are also working on making sure that all of our groups are represented on campus and in our parent leadership groups. So yeah, there's the T1 for community stakeholder engagement. And then our next one is systems and structures. And this is looking at more systemically. We don't have any T1s, but that doesn't mean we're not doing things. We have a couple that are ongoing, and ongoing as far as timing is concerned. These are things that have already taken place and they're going to continue. All right. So I'm going to look at SS1, and that is expand recruitment through participation in job fairs, virtual and in-person, advertising and recruiting sites. One of the things that I'm really proud of during our hiring process that we've started doing, and this is in the history portion of this slide, is we have more than one question in all of our interviews right now for certificated and classified staff, where we have equity focused questions on the interview panels. And I think that's a really important piece because during the interview process, we're not only interviewing candidates, but they're also interviewing us. And we're trying to figure out if they're a fit or a match for our district. And they're also doing the same thing. We want them to have long careers here. They want to have long careers wherever they land. But during that interview process, we make it really clear that this is a priority. So if this is something that you're not bought into, if this is something that you don't know how to answer, you're not going to be working for us. And I think that's a really important piece as we grow as a district and do what's best for our students. So that is ongoing, and that's something that I'm really proud of that we have taken on.
All right, and with that, that's the end of our slide deck this evening. Any questions, comments, anything anybody wants to discuss?
Could you talk a little bit about next steps in terms of getting feedback on this from board members, from the community, from the parent guardian task force? What's kind of the iterate evolution process for this plan?
And we have sent it, or Julie, go ahead. You can take that.
I was probably going to say the same thing you're going to say, which is that we've sent the plan to our parent guardian task force. And once we have a meeting with them, I imagine that will be a big part of that meeting is soliciting feedback there. And, you know, as I said at the start, it's a working document and should be. You know, if you think about our LCAP, which is another document that's a little bit more massive, every year there's an annual update. And the thing that you do is you say, okay, did you do what you said you were going to do? And if you didn't, why didn't you? And what did you do instead? And, you know, so the accountability needs to be there. I also, and this is partly through the work with Deborah McKnight, have been really kind of landing on a place of let's not wait for perfect. You know, wait means never. And so we're stepping into the work as imperfect as it may be, and recognize that we could spend a whole year creating the perfect document and that won't get us any closer to the classroom, which is our goal. Our goal is to impact our students in our classrooms. And so we're really trying to have actionable steps that are visible to our kids, visible to our families. And we welcome feedback, absolutely. I had one parent talk with me a little bit about just the kind of the human resources part and some shifts there. And I'm like, you're right. You know, we really need to dive in at a much deeper level there. And we know it. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, yeah, that does answer the question. I'll see if there's anyone else have any thoughts, reflections, questions.
This is Ryan. This is remarkable. You know, it's like it's very deep. There's a lot of thought going into it. There's a lot of consideration going into it. There's a lot of angles that are being considered. There are a lot of people that are affected, and there are a lot of people that have no idea what's going on. And then your statement about how you just got to accept that we're not going to be perfect, but we're going to get in the water anyway. And yeah, it might be cold, but you know, we got to do it. And I applaud that approach, because to do nothing is unacceptable. And to unacknowledge it is ignorance. So I'm proud that this work is being done. And even the stuff that I see and read here is very thoughtful. And it also tells someone like me that I have a lot to consider, because I don't consider those things very often. And so it opens up my mind to say, hey, you know, there's a lot here that I don't understand, and wow, look how deep it goes. So I applaud us for getting in the water, even though it might be cold. And I think it's you got a long way to go, but what a great journey. And I think it'll inform and bring people along at a pace that will collectively bring us up as a community faster, and from the ground level up. So from the kid that's getting this education that's probably smarter than the parents by the time it comes home to discuss dinner, you know, like it starts at that level and it encompasses everything. So I'm really proud to see this. It looks great.
I want to add something about the way you presented I think the plan is a very thorough plan. And the fact that you actually choose to only talk to us about one item on each page, it actually shows that this is complex. And that if you choose one, we could have also gone very quickly through the 35 action items and had gotten nothing. So I think this is part of that work, is that you won't be able to concentrate on all those items at the same time. It will be deep in one based on the group of either professionals or parents or students you are with. And I think even that dynamic is telling me that you are tackling this the right way, in a humble way. Like, today we're going to talk about that. We're not going to cover everything. So I think that took to my heart about the way you are approaching it. The content matters to me, but also the way you are approaching it seems to be manageable and achievable. That's because we don't want to have that on the agenda and never do anything about it. So that's why it just make me think you're in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to share off, I think, something Ryan mentioned that came also to mind is I really also appreciate the focus on what can we do to bring this to the classroom and have that be the priority in the forefront. And having said that, just reflecting on a little bit of what Ryan said, is also the idea, as was done with the racial equity mission statement, where the board was added in, because I think we can play a role of making sure that this is not going to go away if we have some changes. So I definitely agree that the forefront needs to be, how does this show up in the classroom? But I also don't want to lose the potential of keeping it systemic and locked in, because I think as a board, that's our role, is making sure that this isn't an ad hoc thing that happens to be happening because Julia and Marcy are here, or that there are certain people who are leading this, but it might look different next year if something changes, that we support it, we show our support for it, we are part of the learning process. So maybe there's, in addition to staff, there's board PD and onboarding that happens, there's board recruitment as part of the process, those kinds of things, and that we take tangible actions to make this locked in as part of the system, not just something we're going to be doing right now that might change. So that's my feeling, is how can we participate in supporting this rather than just verbalizing it in a meeting, so that it's durable and long lasting and sustainable. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I think that's important as well.
Yeah, I think one of the elements of our work with Deborah that's been really helpful is to focus on what kind of leaders are we as white leaders. We're, all of us in this space right now are all white. And so focusing on whether or not we are transformational and or are we instructional leaders. And like we did when Rick Bagley was with us, focusing on Hattie's work and what makes the most impact and difference in the classroom. And it's really being the instructional leader. Of course, we have to have a transformational aspect of the work that we're doing is we're creating, but we really need to be instructional in nature, because the instructional is what gets to students, is what really impacts students. And so I think, Shelley, as you talked about, we definitely do want to have and have plans for Deborah to be with us here at the board level. And if there's any elements to your own personal journeys, just as we're going on our own personal journeys through this as well, I'm happy to share. May have seen the email I sent over the weekend with some resources. And so we want to just be sure that we are doing the work here with the trustees as well as with every single one of ourselves and our employees too. And then really impacting what we're doing, because it's not just our students. We want to also be able to ensure that the working environment for all of our employees is we can attract, we can hire folks, but we need to be able to retain them also in our employment practices. To make sure that as we're hiring for a more diverse staff, that this is a place where they also feel comfortable and they want to be too. So our efforts are all around for our students, our families, and our staff in our whole RVSD community.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much, and we look forward to coming back at a future meeting.
All right. Yes, looking forward to that ongoing iterative process, and as things evolve, hearing some more. All right, let's move to the presentation D2, which is the update on the school's full return. And this is the fourth one this year.